giant spaceships, creepy old women, and triggering my PTSD from high school gym class. Amazon's The Vast of Night is a sci-fi set in the 1950s which asks the question, did cheerleader uniforms really look like this? In this video we'll be taking a deep dive into its ending, so connect your lines because here we go. The first thing you need to know is that we're watching a TV show within a movie. The Vast of Night is the name of the episode of a television program called Paradox Theater, an homage to the Twilight Zone. Even the narration found in their introductions are eerily similar.
And found only in a frequency caught between logic and myth.
It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition.
And this film plays a lot with that line between the real and the imaginary. As viewers, we're never sure what we're hearing is true, or as characters from this era would say, malarkey. Later in the film, when Everett talks to Mabel Blanche, he hears a fantastical tale about how her son was taken by aliens. He doesn't believe her, but as we'll find out in the last scene, that will change. Paradox Theater is the perfect name for the show we're about to watch because in theater there are many paradoxes. Like how what we're watching is real, yet simulated. The audience is involved, yet remains apart. The actors are themselves, yet they are characters. If you rewind a little bit, you can make out how the music creates these waveforms, almost like an oscilloscope. Considering how the film revolves around the radio, it's easy to see why the director chose to start with this image. We're introduced to one of the main characters, Everett. He runs the local radio station and is the go-to guy when anyone at the school seems to have a problem. And that's exactly what has happened. The school's been plagued with power outages, which everyone seems to blame on a squirrel who chewed through the electrical line. As we'll find out later, there's something more mysterious at play, and for the first 15 minutes or so the dialogue never stops. There's always someone talking on screen bombarding us with information about the people or town that it becomes difficult to keep up. This is a stark contrast to the final 10 minutes of the film where there's almost no dialogue at all. We then meet Faye, a local switchboard operator who needs Everett's help working her new tape recorder. He even walks her to work, and the downtown street is lined up with these lights that resemble miniature flying saucers. Faye is really into science and tells Everett about all the amazing new technology she's read about in magazines, like automated cars that give directions through the radio, vacuum tubes that can transport people, or small screens people keep on them at all times to communicate with one another. But the transition to the real meat of the story happens about 18 minutes in. The director has chosen to show this blinking flying saucer type image, foreshadowing the end of the film, which fades into the television, reminding us that what we're watching isn't real. Faye takes over the switchboard and starts getting some unusual calls, like one from a woman who has gone to hide in her cellar after seeing a large object over her land, which has created tornado-like wind. Then she hears an unusual sound.
Hello?
The New York Times reported that this sound was created using a mixture of instruments, human throat noises, and mechanical hums.
We wanted the sound in particular to be new in cinema.
This sound will play a pivotal role throughout the film, as it will be the one Everett airs over the radio, looking for anyone who may know what it is. There's this amazing long shot that travels all the way from the switchboard through to the school and out to Everett's radio station. In fact, the camera doesn't cut for almost 4.5 minutes. This gives us a sense of where everything is in relation to one another, since as Mabel later says, the aliens only like to take people who are alone or away from crowds. The hovering effect of this shot also implies like we're one of these spaceships traversing the town in search of someone new to take aboard. Everett receives a phone call from a man named Billy. Billy says he's heard that sound when he worked for the military. Now I have to apologize for the lack of corresponding visuals here. The film purposely keeps us in the dark when Billy is explaining his side of the story, just like how Billy was kept in the dark about what was really going on at this top secret base. So Billy ends up digging an enormous hole with his co-workers, which was later filled with a, quote, smooth object that looked damaged, and it was covered in a tarp, an object bigger than an airplane. All the clues given to us point that this object was one of the smaller flying saucers we see near the end. Billy says it wasn't American, Russian, or anything he had seen before. This was something different. Billy was sworn to secrecy about this mission and told that giving this information could jeopardize America. He also talks about building ventilation rooms with see-through glass, if indeed it was a flying saucer in there that crashed crash landed on Earth, it's safe to assume these ventilation-type rooms were used to study or dissect the alien creatures on board. In fact, that may be why these aliens keep coming back. They're looking for their people and possibly, in retaliation, have taken some of ours. If we're performing experiments on them and taking them against their will, who's to say they aren't doing the same to us? Billy also talks about how he became sick after, akin to radiation poisoning. This would explain why what he was building was underground to contain this radioactive entity. Billy tells him that a friend of his recorded the sound and mailed it to a bunch of people, one of whom lives in their hometown, but he passed away and his recordings were donated to the local library. So Faye breaks into the library and retrieves them, allowing Everett to broadcast the sound in the hopes anyone else may have heard it. That's when they get a call from Mabel Blanche, an old woman who claims her son was taken by, quote, the people in the sky. Mabel tells a fascinating tale about how, as a child, there was a woman who survived a mysterious train accident where everyone on board disappeared. This woman would say cryptic words in her sleep, the same words she's heard saying when Everett first enters.
Yewe Rafu Oyek, Atelewud Nanetzol.
Now, I tried to see if there was any hidden meaning to these words. I even played it backwards, which you can listen to here. But I couldn't find anything, and that's probably the point, since if these are aliens, their language is probably something we can't even comprehend. Later, Mabel recalls the story of her child, Hollis. Hollis's first words were the same words she heard that mysterious woman saying to herself in her sleep. She recounts an even stranger story when Hollis was 4. He'd stare up at the sky, and when she repeated those words, his lips would move along with hers. Something was communicating with Hollis, something only he could hear. Then, at the age of 9, Hollis left out the front door and disappeared. His footprints were found leading 150 feet away, but then they just vanished. Since then, the townspeople thought Mabel killed her son, but the investigation showed up nothing. Mabel has a theory, however. She believes the aliens are controlling us like some sort of advanced radio. They are the ones that get in our heads, the ones that say we should always clean our house, lose weight, or do destructive things. On a greater scale, they are the ones that cause nations to go to war. It's a way of distracting us. She says,
But free will is impossible with them up there.
If we're being controlled and we don't even know it, is there such thing as free will? As Everett and Faye pack up to leave, Mabel has one last request, that they take her to the alien ship so that she can be with her long-lost son. Everett thinks she's crazy, even refusing the paper containing the mysterious words she was saying earlier. And when Faye and Everett leave, we get a good encapsulation of how different these two characters are. Faye believes Mabel could be telling the truth, while Everett is a staunch realist, preferring to believe that these mysterious occurrences are pointing at a Russian invasion from Mexico rather than aliens. And this goes back to the very beginning of the film, where we must choose to travel the path of logic or of myth. Logic Everett, myth Faye. So Faye totally forgets that her friend Ethel was supposed to be looking after this baby, so she goes to get her and finds Ethel missing, but we'll later learn in a phone call that she was up on the roof watching what appeared to be a flying saucer. So Faye gets her camera to take photographic evidence and teams up with Everett and 2 of his friends. But when Everett plays those words on the tape recorder, his friends look up into the sky as if controlled by something. This was the same thing that happened to Mabel's son, Hollis. Faye and Everett dash out of the car and run into the forest, where they come upon a clearing. The nearby trees and ground have been burned, and when they look up into the sky, the tree line has been ripped open. It's a bit hard to see in the dark, but you can make out snapped branches. Everett now believes they're not alone.
They're here. They're really here.
They see a flying saucer emerge, making its way up to a ship that looks about 1,000 times bigger. That's why I believe the ship Billy was making room for on his secret mission was for one of these smaller saucers and not this large thing. I can only imagine how big a hole you'd need to dig to fit that thing underground. You'll also notice in this shot here, Everett and Faye looking up in awe at the ship. I don't believe they're controlled here, as the next scene we see Everett and Faye embracing as a tornado-like wind seemingly finally sucks them up into the ship. We earlier heard a woman describe tornado-like winds when she called into the switchboard. Now, we never see what happened to Faye and Everett. The town goes back to normal, the lights turn back on at the radio station, but our final shot gives us some clues. It starts with footprints in the dirt and dust that have piled up. Remember that Mabel followed footprints to find her son, only to have them lead to nothing. We then see the tape recorder which has been left behind, covered in dust, the only remnant of Everett and Faye. The fact the recorder was left behind, but no evidence of Everett and Faye, suggests they were taken, much like Hollis was. But why? Well, that's the ambiguity of the ending. We do know these aliens haven't attacked, and they keep a low profile. If they were truly dangerous, they'd have wiped out humanity long ago. They are also clearly far more advanced than us. So who are these aliens? Are they from another planet? Are they us from the future? I will say that this ship does look like it could have been built from material on Earth. Regardless, the ending is up to our own interpretation. It's meant to make us think. But in the end, the film ends with a reminder that what we're watching isn't real. We're watching a TV program. It's up to us to straddle that line between logic and myth, science and superstition. Which one will you choose? Thanks everyone for watching. Please make sure to give this video a like and subscribe. I'm always coming out with new content. For more bad takes, you can also follow me on Twitter at ThinkStoryYT. Until next time, remember, Daddy loves you very much.